All right, I'm here with Chris. Chris, what's your last name?
Zeitz.
Zeitz. All right,
Zeitz,
there
yeah.
we go. And I had the privilege of meeting you in the UMA dip. We can talk about that later because I think people in the community are relatively familiar with that. I'm mostly interested in you because you have a very cool background.
Thank you.
You were already kind of talking about it a little bit, but can you like kind of circle back and start over a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So this is my third summer living in Philadelphia. I'm from Texas originally, and I have a lot of family up here. I've been coming here for quite some time, pretty much my whole life, just visiting in the summer, and then the last 3 years is when I started living here on my own, being up here. And I got an internship this summer at Penn, working in their sport performance, like strength and conditioning department. So I was really fortunate to get that, and it's more of like a professional thing that is opening a lot of doors here in the city. So eventually I want to move here. It's my goal is to start moving up here within the next year or two. But yeah, like we were just talking about psychology, and I got my master's in psychology a couple of years ago, and it was a great experience, and learning a lot of life skills within that master's degree and how it transfers over to education and coaching, like what I'm doing now. So it's been really really valuable. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit of what you do in San Antonio?
Yeah, so I work as a soccer coach and a health educator in San Antonio. So I work at a private high school, and I have a few different roles there, right? So I coach soccer, I teach health classes, and then I teach weightlifting classes to the middle school kids there as well. So really it's kind of like an umbrella of sports and health and coaching, teaching, and working in education, and teaching movement, really, like in a sport form or in the weightlifting form. That's kind of like what I've been doing there, and educating kids how to be healthy. Yeah.
Do you get most of that information from kinesiology, like that methodology, or where are most of the breakthroughs in that sort of science or method coming from?
Yeah, it's my background is kind of like non-traditional when it comes to this. Like, I don't have a degree in kinesiology, right? Like, I have a degree in biology and I have a degree in psychology, but a lot of this just comes from myself being involved in sports almost my whole life, and being involved in training and going to training sessions, going to the gym constantly, and always being involved in sports, being around coaches, being around teachers, really my whole life. So it's like kind of a blend of my background, like my educational background, but also my life history and my life experiences.
That's really cool
as well. Yeah.
What sort of things is the Penn program teaching you? Like what sort of modalities and practices? Yeah,
so Penn is really cool because I have this great, like, wonderful opportunity to work with these collegiate athletes at a D1 level. So we're working with the football team, and basically it's a very hands-on learning experience. So you are in the weight room while they are training, and you see what they do, you see how they work out, you get a feel for the context, for the environment, and then we learn how to coach, right? We learn how to coach movements in weightlifting technique, right? So you can learn things like, all right, if this exercise is too difficult, then we're going to regress back to a simpler form before we can go back up to a harder form. And so that's been a very valuable experience, because that's the basis of what you need to learn for coaching movement, is that kind of like that foundational coaching experience. So it's been great.
Do they have measurable ways of tracking how certain success in the weight room translates to the field? Is that something that is quantifiable, or is it something that is more kind of anecdotal, like so and so is just looking good on the field, opposed to like being able to track maybe speed in terms of responsiveness, or whatever sort of metrics, like maybe even just their stats, their But I'm curious because the weight room, strength and conditioning with all sports is very key, but I don't always know if sports are tracking results, particularly team sports, right? Because I can get it, like if a tennis player is looking to win, if they're winning more, then that's your evidence, right? So is there anything beyond just winning that like can determine the success of whatever programs?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question, and I think a question that is really embedded every day in what we do in athletics and sports is what we are doing effective, right?
Yeah.
The effectiveness of like training in the weight room, versus not training in the weight room, right? There is a science there. You could track your numbers in the weight room. You could be like, hey, I am lifting more, right? Like I am running faster than I did a month ago, just by like sprinting and timing it, for instance, or you can see how much weight you're lifting, right? That's a very like measurable thing that's happening. Honestly, I think there is a large correlational anecdotal part to it, because it's not guaranteed that you get in the weight room and then it's automatically going to make you like a better football player, or a better tennis player, or a better soccer player. It helps you, right? It helps you a lot, but it doesn't necessarily, not like a causal relationship. Like, if I just work hard in the weight room, then automatically like I'm a better tennis player. There's a lot more variables and factors that go into it.
I guess you're always balancing skill versus various different attributes.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like you could be fast, you could be strong, you could be tough, you could be agile, a good problem solver. But then those skills those attributes and characteristics are only as good as your skill. So your skill is what allows for the expression of those traits to come through in their best way.
Yeah, so this is a really good example of maybe a nature nurture problem or like discussion, debate, right? So like you can have a genetically gifted athlete where they're just like naturally good at whatever it is, sport, even dancing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you're naturally just a good dancer. It's kind of built in, but when you're strength training, right, like anybody could strength train because it's very like cut and dry, right? Like you go in and you can lift some weights. It's very easy to right? Like you don't have to be like that good. Yeah, you don't have to be super gifted in order to like learn it. But like I said, it could help you, if you're genetically gifted and you pair it with strength training, for instance, you could be a better athlete. Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean, I guess certain modalities of training, lifting, and this might be an anecdote, but it's often suggested that people as they age do some sort of weight-bearing training. You know, and I don't know if that's an anecdote, and if there's any truth to that, but supposedly if you can gain some benefit in just day-to-day life as just a regular person, you would gain benefit in your sport or your activity. But these things are interesting. What about, like, I'm sure do you come across those athletes that are real lazy or bad in the gym, but are incredible on the field?
Right.
And probably are real kind of like, man, I don't feel like being in the gym right now. I'd rather like play some video games. Or maybe they might be more into studying tape, studying film, than but when it comes to the gym, they're like totally like dismissive, but they're killing it on the field. How do you all kind of work in those circumstances?
Yeah, so I think an analogy might be helpful here. So it's kind of like that classic example of a really intelligent student that you have in class, maybe like in high school or something, and everyone knows they're smart, but they like lack the work ethic to like be really good at this like one, being smart and being intelligent or whatever field, whatever domain it is. They could still succeed, right? But if we're talking about a predictable outcome, they're like less likely to succeed because that talent could be kind of hard to measure.
Yeah.
And hard to quantify. So if you're in the weight room, the weight room is very like sciencey. Like it's very like, here are the numbers, like here's the data, and we're trying to like translate. I mean, can you imagine like if you were trying to draft somebody into the NFL and like you didn't have these quantifiable metrics,
sure,
and you're gonna spend millions of dollars on this prospect? That doesn't make sense, right? Because like based off of this kind of like hard to measure subjective talent that maybe they don't produce all the time.
Yeah.
So strength training can help you be a little bit more predictable in your outcomes.
At the very least, the combines are fun.
Yeah. They're fun, yeah.
It's just like, but I get it. It's like that's where that's one area of where they're trackable, measurable results, but then also whatever stats the person has on the field. So you're combining those because it's like those, like the stats that they have on the field are also measurables too. It's like how many touchdowns or how many tackles, how many sacks, or how many home runs or how many goals or how many stops. You know what I mean? Like all of those also like are things that you can track, but maybe they're less predictable and maybe more kind of like vulnerable to chance. Maybe it's like the weight room. It seems like you can predict. The science of it is like if I do this, causal. Like if I do this, this will happen.
Right.
Whereas the field, it's like a random, so many chaotic, sort of circumstances that, for why did you stop throwing those touchdown passes? But you're doing great in the weight room, or you look good, and then maybe something else is going on with that person.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. So think about like Tom Brady, right?
Yeah.
We all know Tom Brady, and I mean he was picked like in one of the last rounds of the draft, and like yet he's the winningest. I think he's the winningest like QB like 7 Super Bowls, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like that would be an example of like a clash between like the art and science of sport. Is like maybe his metrics weren't great, like in the beginning when he like got drafted, but then over time, right, like he consistently like put in work in the weight room and also the skill training in football, and then it like produced a result. But like the crazy thing about it is like you can't like do that all the time, right? Like you can't like bet on some guy to do that. Like that was like a once in a generation example. Yeah. Like an outlier, right? So you need both, right? You need the science, you need the anecdotal part, kind of like the less sciencey, like talent, skill. So I think sports are like a true combination of both.
So there are some people who are uber aware of what's happening to their bodies. Like they're very sensitive. That's an attribute that they have. And so I wonder, like, if you find that there's some people who are super aware and that awareness of kind of what's happening to them, even the value of the program that you're going through, helps to get them on track for progress, opposed to maybe someone who's going through the same program and is obedient to it, but maybe is like oblivious to the value, or even, not sensitive to what's going on in their bodies. Is there any correlation between those sorts of things and progress? For instance, there is a point, and I'll lead you with this and project a little bit. There's a point that I find with some folks where they're almost too sensitive and too thoughtful and too like procedural in their way of going about things, that it gets them in their heads and prohibits fluidity.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of that, but then there's like, so anecdotally, I've seen certain things on my end. I'm curious to know like what you've seen in terms of that sort of description.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I would say there is a natural ability to have a body intelligence. There are many different kinds of intelligences out there. It's not just being book smart, right? We now know that there are other ways you can be intelligent. So having like a body IQ, if you will, or like a movement IQ can definitely give you a leg up in learning motor skill and learning movement or dance, sports. I'll say this, right? If you are obedient and maybe you don't have as much of a body IQ, but you're coachable, right? I often think that that's better in a way, because naturally we can just get better with repetition over time.
Yeah.
But the thing with dance that I found interesting, as opposed to like sports, is there is a fluidity to it, and like a style and you have to like there's a feeling aspect to dance that in sports you can get away with not doing as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But I wonder if at a certain point there are like subtle similarities. Maybe the feeling kind of the output at the end of it is different. Like for instance, with the dancer, there's no like, the achievement and the end goal is like the image or the message that the movement conveys. So it's like expression through the body has an end point of making a statement. Whereas a pitcher, however they like are holding the ball, whatever sort of motion they need when they throw that change up or that slider, my guess with kind of like touch, you know, like in soccer, you know, that's a sport that I think I have enough kind of formative experience with, that touch is everything, right? But that to me, the same way that someone who plays soccer, like really, that the way that they have a handle on the ball at any given moment will determine the outcome, and how, like, you know, like the way that certain people can take a corner, right? Like that's why there's a select group of people who come up to take the corner. Not everybody takes the corners, you know, on a team. Yeah. At least when I was growing up, that like not everybody took the corners, you know. But I think there's something like that in terms of in dance too, where it's like that. I feel like that expression and that sensitivity is for a certain outcome, and certain senses. Not all senses are the same, as they should convey a certain symbol or a certain message or a certain sign within the code of the particular dance, in theory.
Yeah.
Because it's also codified. Like you're playing, like with the vernacular dances, you're playing inside rules. So it's not like anything goes with like how you're making shapes or like feeling or emoting. Like some emoting, it just doesn't, is like out of the ballpark. It's out of bounds. You can't do that.
Yeah, so I was just having this like conversation with one of my friends last night who she's a Latin dancer, and she's also a strength and conditioning coach here in Philly, and she loves dancing. But she was teaching me how to body roll.
Yeah.
So we learned how to body roll.
Yeah.
Right, and I was like, this is how I learned how to body roll, and she had a whole different way of doing it.
Yeah,
that was maybe more of like a Latin influence.
Yeah.
And she was teaching me, and I was like trying to understand it. Like maybe it was like a little bit too much information.
Yeah.
How you were saying, like you can kind of like overstimulate somebody.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, she was like, all right. She was like, honestly, a lot of this is just like feeling the music, and just feeling the beat, and like that's where a lot of this like comes from. And I like thought about it, and I was like, yes, and if you didn't learn that like foundational like movement pattern, then how would you know like what to do?
That's exactly.
And that was the dilemma I found myself in, because I was like, all right, I know I want to dance, I like to dance, and I had this like urge to dance like within my body, but then I didn't know like how to put that out in like real time.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like it's like a kid. It's like a baby who doesn't know how to speak yet, and they need to like be taught words, and they need to be taught like how to walk or how to and then they can do that. Right?
I mean, I
so
think
it's kind of similar.
I totally see. I mean, I think a lot of like social dancing has historically been about has been associated with like some sort of nature thing, you know, but it's never really been that in my mind. I think it's really about exposure, which is the environment, and then maybe not like a direct kind of like cultivation of an individual, but it's just the environment or someone's affinities then informs how they then learn how to move. I think that like for so long there was this there were like, you know, stigmas around kind of more street dances or like, you know, club dances, whether it's like salsa or, you know, like hip hop, you know, and I think those stigmas came from just like, you know, divisiveness in society. But I think people fail to recognize that like we're all being shaped and molded by our environments. You know, it's like you know, even with soccer, you know, growing up in a community that played the sport casually made it so that certain movements, you know, no one taught us as elementary school kids how to do those movements. It was based on watching the game at various different levels and like imitating people who we were, you know, inspired by, you know, and that's, you know, just in my upbringing with like movement practices, it's like those are all, they're all languages, and they're all sort of like, you know, so even friends of mine who you know, like for instance, my friends, I always was very interested in lacrosse. I think lacrosse is a beastly sport. You know, it's so athletic, it's somewhat violent, and I like it for that. Or it's not somewhat violent, it's kind of, I love it. It's such an aggressive sport, and I think it's so graceful too. But I didn't have enough exposure, like, so when I wanted to play the sport, I just didn't have a lot of, you know, I tried it, but not only did I not like have any, like a lot of coaching, it's just I didn't really understand like the movements and like the balance and like kind of, there's so much that I just didn't get. But I came into soccer getting coached with like all this like play growing up without being coached, you know, but you know, it just, so it was very adapted because I already had like this sort of kind of relationship to that sort of movement. And I would say the same thing for myself with dance. So I always question people who make really anything like down to this kind of like, you know, it's just purely they have that gift. I think it always comes from some level of like exposure to something that is like a rudiment or like a root for them to like to have maybe some potential or capacity or innate talent. So like and so then it goes back to the point that you said about like feeling. It's just about feeling the music. I think, you know, it's more than feeling the music, right?
Yeah,
it's like because I think once you have a certain control of the body, then you can make the body relate to the music in a way that's intentional.
Yeah.
But it's a very complex kind of thing, learning this thing called dance, which is way more abstract than sport.
Yes.
But they're both very physical, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But that's why a lot of people don't break dance. Do you want to know why? Because it's like that's the point where it's like, oh, it's more than abstract now. You have to be like so precise as a gymnast or an athlete. You know, why is gymnastics not dance? But why is that? Why is it just associated with sport? And why is breakdance becoming more and more divorced from dance? This guy loves it.
Yeah,
you know, I must have the good stuff. Why is breakdance becoming absorbed into sport and less so kind of residing in dance? You know, there's such absolutes with kind of those movements because it's all based around physics. It's all based around precision, and it's also quantifiable. How many spins did they do? How long did they hold that position? You know, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, breakdancing is hard. My relationship to breakdance has been kind of like up and down this summer. Like, I was taking it beginner, and then I took like a beginner, like an advanced beginner with Jay Ruckus.
Yeah.
And I remember leaving, and I was like, I'm done. I was like, I can't break dance. I was like, I can't dance on the floor. Like, my body's too big. Like, I can't do it. Like, usually, you know, the really good break dancers are like small and like small stature, and I was like, I can't.
So gymnasts.
The gymnast, yeah. And I was like, I can't do it. And then one of my friends, Chelsea, actually, who goes here, she was like, yeah, let's go to a breakdance class. And I was like, all right. And I gave it another try, and then I can now do the helicopter move.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's on film. I can do the helicopter.
Yeah.
But I have to take it so like slow because it is so physical, and like my body isn't used to it. But I did notice with breakdance, like you're not getting as much of that like, oh, I'm gonna go feel the music and like vibe out. Like it's like a very like physical, like takes a lot of cognitive attention to what you're doing. Yeah. Whereas like house with you, I noticed it's like you can be really like vibey with it. Like you get in this like motion, right? And you're like, okay, right? Like I'm getting in this vibe, in this flow. Whereas breakdance is, at least from a beginner perspective, is a little bit more like regimented and more athletic and more physical, like you're saying, and it's hard. I mean,
yeah, it definitely is.
You know,
you know, I mean, I think a lot of the dances are, you know, it's like the origin of breaking is totally tied towards establishing hierarchies, competition, sport. I mean, in some of the story with breaking, it's the kind of one possible solution or alternative to gang violence. You know?
Okay.
And so, if that is in fact true, you know, if the story is, if it's not just a tale and it's true, then that makes kind of sense, you know, that something very athletic, something very powerful, and also at its root very kind of masculine oriented, in terms of just, rough and tumble sort of play. Would come out of something that's like counter gang. But then its inherent competitiveness is what then allows for it to be made into a sport. But then really what's interesting to me is that almost everything across the board eventually gets gamified or made into sport. Sport is becoming ubiquitous in a lot of ways, especially in a way that sport is starting to intersect with art, or expression.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting to me, just thinking about like how quick like dance in itself is like, like ballet, the Grand Prix or the prizes, like that's competition based. Ballroom dance is competition based. All of the street dance styles are competition based, like the sport of it has oddly become in a lot of ways the industry of it, like surfing is sport. Surfing, I'm not a surfer, but like, my guess is that people surfing like throughout time has not been about like competition. It's like a lifestyle. It's like connection with nature. It's fun. It's a pastime. Skateboarding is a sport. Skiing is a sport. Like everything is a sport. Everything has become a sport, and so it becomes this kind of like interesting thing. Like, like in terms of understanding the motivations, and then where is the line between movement that is recreational or communal versus sport? Like, how do you see, coming as someone who is so practiced in athletics and sport-oriented athletics, how do you then relate to dance as, a newcomer?
Yeah. Man, you have so many good loaded things. Like it's, I have so much to say. I mean, so growing up, right? Like my parents did not put me in like pee-wee football or like, the little soccer teams when I was like in elementary school or whatever. Like I didn't do that. Like, I mean, they always wanted me to be active, right? Like we would take walks, we would, be engaged in other activities, but it wasn't like I was put into that competitive sport aspect immediately. And like I thank them all the time for doing that, because it allows me to have that intrinsic motivation to like do this kind of thing, to like move, play sports, dance, whatever it is. Like it came from me, like yes, a little bit from them too, right? Like if they didn't preach any of that at all, like maybe I wouldn't be here, but they didn't push me into it. They weren't helicopter parents or like living through me, through a sport or whatever. They were just kind of like, all right, we'll lay a little foundation, play sports, recreation. I threw the ball at my dad and play basketball with my dad and all that. But that, I think it's so important, because the intrinsic motivation that I feel I still have to this day, like motivates me to like keep doing this, like to dance, like to coach, to play soccer, like whatever I'm doing, play pickleball, like whatever movement it is, like I still have that. So what I'm saying is, I think nowadays kids are being forced and pushed into this competitive environment really early, and it leads to burnout like later in age. So listen, like sports, dance, like a lot of this came from a recreational aspect, like a recreational motivation. Like Jay Ruckus, like he was telling me, I used to spin around and do windmills on the concrete, like with my bare back. Like he was like, I started with that. That was like when I started breakdancing. Like he didn't take a class, right? Like, so I love that, because it shows like that true passion, like that you have, and nobody else around you is like forcing it on you. and I just think it makes it more like meaningful for you, and to keep continuing in that like throughout your life.
Yeah,
You know,
it's kind of like self and communal expression at
yeah.
its root. How do you, so there's a lot of, I've met a handful of people who come to UMA who, for them, it's an interesting, they've expressed to me that it's an outlet and a chance to have some sort of invigorated sort of experience in their bodies that maybe they weren't the sporty types growing up, and maybe were maybe ostracized from like the sporty types, but the dance has this kind of, it provides this kind of like aerobic sort of activation, this sort of like intensity, problem solving maybe even, that creates maybe an endorphin sort of release.
Fresh, yeah.
Yeah, and then also like is physically activating. And so I'm really interested in how in adulthood, people who've maybe have through their formative years had some adversity in relationship to sport growing up, because sports in general are not always constructively disseminated among the youth. A lot of young people have trauma around gym class, around like, you know, whatever, you know, and so I think what I've found is that the dance class has the capacity to provide people with rigor, yet more the kind of something that's a little bit more holistic or something like that, other than just like for the sake of dominance or winning or you know, being number one.
I think that culture happens a lot in contact sports, especially like I want to dominate you, like I want to like be the alpha, be more powerful. I haven't really noticed that at UMA and in dance.
Well, I mean, that's why people flock to it.
Yeah, it's like it's this very like welcoming, non-judgmental environment, which I really appreciate. You know.
Yeah. How from your vantage point, like, what could you maybe suggest based on even your own experience, or even just like your own experience learning dance, but then also maybe even your experience from just coaching, like how people can think about a dance practice and begin thinking about how to track and encourage results and progress, you know, because it can feel very abstract and ambiguous, you know, what you know, so it's like someone's just coming to class and it's like, am I getting better? And maybe even that's a way to even coach me, like what could you imagine as certain tactics that I'm able to kind of share with people to make these abstract principles more tangible and measurable?
Yeah, that's good. I think you're kind of getting to that like feedback aspect of progress and of learning, which can be difficult in dance because it is a little bit abstract and a little bit like hard to measure, right? And from a personal standpoint, I think like when we're ciphering, like in some of the classes, like, and other people around are like encouraging and they're like, oh wow, or they're like clapping or they're like cheering you on or whatever, or like, oh wow, that was cool or something, like that's a little bit of a feedback mechanism.
Yeah.
So like you're doing this, right? Like you put something in, you're doing this, it comes out, and then there's like a feedback on the outside that helps inform what you're doing and like what you're putting out there. So yeah, feedback can come in different forms. From a teaching perspective, like I notice with you, like you're very like encouraging, like you're very like, you get excited. You're like, yeah, like you're like, yeah, like that kind of like is stuck in my head. And when you do that for an individual person, you're like, yeah, Chris, like you're doing great. Like that can mean a lot for a beginner when you give them that like personal, specific compliment.
Yeah.
And I think people can pick up whether it's like genuine or not. Like people can pick up like, oh, he's just saying that because he's the teacher and like I'm in a class, or like, wow, that was like a real like compliment because I actually did this. And then that feedback helps reinforce like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's very powerful. Like reinforcement is like powerful in learning, like education, right? I also noticed like videotaping myself, like I started doing that recently. It's like huge.
Very big. Very, very
hard
powerful.
at first, like to watch yourself because you're like, damn, you know, you can be so critical of yourself, but makes a huge difference, like looking at yourself outside of yourself. It's a very like meta, weird, like.
But athletes do it all the time.
Yeah, like they watch film, right?
Film. Yeah.
They watch film?
Yeah.
You should do it. Like you have to if you want to improve, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge, powerful like feedback mechanism. Or like friends that know you, family that know you, and they see you dance, and they're like, wow, like giving you that compliment. And you're like, okay, I know this person, so it's probably a real compliment.
Yeah.
You know, so that can be super helpful.
Yeah.
In terms of like learning dance.
Yeah, that's
you know?
I mean, even for me, hearing that from you is really helpful as well.
Yeah.
Because it's you want people to succeed and get better, and you want to be clear about what that is. And some people's metric, and oftentimes in dance and street dance, it's like, can you keep up with my choreography and express that choreography? For me, it's not necessarily that, you know, it's not my interest. I want to make and support not make, but help to cultivate and provide a nurturing environment for participants in the culture. So that means to me that they understand how the language, they understand the accents, they understand how to communicate inside the dance. So that means they're essentially club or social dancers. So that's for someone that can be really abstract because it's not test oriented. Choreography is like a test, right? You know, you just it's pass fail, right?
Yeah.
This is not pass fail. This is more like it's something else. It's a body mind sort of development, and then also it's like in tandem with other people. It's like that feedback that you're talking about. That feedback is actually what grows people inside the more kind of original spaces that the culture has developed. It all is about like, you know, getting the head nod or the cheer from your peers, because that tells you that you've done something that's recognizable. Or if you hear silence is either one of two things. Either the minds are blown and they're trying to figure out what the hell is going on, or it's just like, no, it's not working.
Right. Yeah, being in like the ciphers in class can be intimidating, especially as a beginner. And yeah, there were a couple ciphers where I was doing it and there was silence, and I was like, is it bad? I was like, I don't know. But then there's some and they're like, wow, like they're like, you know, clapping and all that, and I'm like, okay, you know, I'm doing something right, you know, and that's like huge in how you go about it.
It's difficult because the cipher is an interesting space, you know, like for beginners. I think oftentimes what can happen for other folks, particularly if they're also beginners, well, first off, very quickly in all this stuff, people start to become competitive. Like, you know, everybody is just so competitive. So like, it's always funny to me, like, you know, everybody, and I've been guilty of it, but, you know, but I'm working actively to constantly correct this in myself, because I'm not happy with it. But, you know, it's like the immediate time where someone can in their mind say, oh, I did a better job than so-and-so. It's like a very, like, people are looking for that. You know, I did a
true.
class that was all about battles, and it's just interesting how people have been conditioned for winning and losing.
Yeah.
And I get it. But very early on, people start like sizing one another up, even on like beginner level.
Yeah.
I think it's human, but I also think that it's like, I think it's also there's something primitive about it, because I think there's so much information, so much like success and like growth that we've all had collectively, and so much information that we have about like progress or what it takes to progress and why we need others around to help us progress. We need our own failures and the failures of others to be able to like to go forth, right? So it's just interesting for me how that happens. But I think oftentimes very early on people are sizing one another up.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, we're naturally like, human beings are naturally comparative beings.
Yeah.
Listen, if you don't compare yourself at all,
Yeah.
you're a psychopath. Like,
Yeah.
like it's like
Yeah,
like let's
yeah.
like let's be real, right? Like, you can't say, oh, I don't care about what anybody
Yeah.
thinks. Like, you do, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to. Like, that's just part of like the human experience. When I started with you and being in classes, like, I was watching everybody, because like I was still learning, comparing a lot. But I think the mindset that helped me like get better was like, I got to develop my own style. And if I'm watching everybody, I can't, because it's too much information going on. But if I listen like internally and I just focus on it and like try to express it as best I can, like through movement and dance, then I'm gonna do better. And that's when it started clicking. Like, I was like, oh, okay, like I get it now. But there was that period where I was like, not like, I was just like looking at everyone, and I don't, that was, you have to get over it.
You do have to get over it. One of my most not to say your group with the Uma Dip was really fun.
Yeah.
I've had another group this most recent time that was smaller, but one of the most poignant moments for me in a while with doing the Uma Dip happened recently. A mother and her 14-year-old daughter did the dip together, and man, they were killing it with choreography. They both could do the choreography like so well, and it was just two of them for I think 2 weeks, and I started to really push it. And one thing that comes to mind with all of this too, in terms of me being interested in like science, interested in genetics, interested in all this stuff, I was like, man, you both learn very rapidly, and you learn, and you know what I mean, and like are very quick and responsive. And so I just am automatically thinking about that, seeing two people from the same gene pool and like witnessing the similarities of how they trend forward, But anyway, one of the most poignant moments to me was that they were learning choreography, and afterwards, one of them, I forget which one, I think it was a mom, looked over and was like, hey, did you make it through? And that was like a light bulb to me, because it perfectly indicated to me that neither of them was really paying attention to the other throughout the entire, then I thought about the whole month. I was like, wait, yeah, they were just like, boom, tunnel focus with me, and just like, mapping it onto their own bodies. And that moment where she was like, hey, did you make it through? Signaled to me that this is what I always have been trying to encourage people to do. It's like really to concentrate and pay attention to themselves and the information, which is very hard to do. Because as soon as you look elsewhere and you start getting feedback, it creates hesitation and delays with your ability to react and perform. It's like if the movement is to do this and you have to look over there, process it, and then do it, you're already milliseconds late. and those milliseconds can like make the movement just like a fumble or just like slightly not there, you know.
Yeah.
But it was really refreshing to like witness them. And I wonder if to some extent it's because, you know, I think it's because there's this kind of quality of like learning for whatever reason that they both have. It could perhaps be that, like, you know, like a familial thing where it's like you got your space, I got my space. But in any case, it's just like I think it was a profound kind of demonstration of to me an effective approach. At the same time, last thing I'll say, it is useful if you are a beginner and you need more kind of feedback and resources. I always tell people to go to the back of the room, you know, because eventually, like, you can like piggyback off of other folks and eventually get there. So there is some value to having some of that kind of like looking around. But if there is that ability to just be laser focused, if someone has that within themselves and the confidence, then I think it's better to just get there right away. To just go with almost abandon and just really just try to make sense of it.
Yeah, so there's this theory in like motor skill learning. This is like a really interesting like sports psychology like tidbit that I learned when I was in school. And it's like when you're starting out and you're learning a motor skill, there's a lot of like focus on the basic skill, like a lot of attentional foci, right? Like you're thinking a lot, like there's a lot of stimuli going on. And beginners need that, like a novice needs that because you need to learn the motor skill, right? Like it's kind of basic. As you get better and as you become an expert and thousands and thousands like repetitions, if you apply that same attentional focus, like how you were doing like as a beginner, it actually negatively impacts your performance because you're getting out of that flow state at that point.
Yeah.
Right? Like like dance, for instance, if you've done it so many years, like it becomes automatic.
Yeah.
And then if you focus too much, it disrupts the automaticity of like a motor pathway in your brain. Right? So it happens in dance, it happens in sports. And so I think when you're a beginner, right, yes, like we naturally do that. Like I think if you told a beginner just focus on yourself, like that might be kind of a tall task or it might be kind of hard. So we're looking a lot, we're focusing on what's going on. But after a while, you want to get to that place of like, okay, you know, I'm just gonna like focus on the dance, focus on, especially in dancing, like the beat, the music. And like, I mean, I think a lot of people have had this experience, like when you go to a club or you go to like a dance party or whatever, and you're kind of like, you don't go right into it right away. You're kind of like on the fringes.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like watching, and like scouting it out.
Yeah.
It becomes harder to like get in the flow.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just go right in and you just not think about it, it's easier to like get in the flow. It's the same principle. Like it's instead of watching everybody first, just go right into it.
Yeah.
And it makes it like a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I think.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but yeah, I mean, so I think the point is like, with motor skill learning, there's this cross between like, okay, you need to focus very intently on what the actual choreography is or like the actual movement pattern. And then naturally you get into a place where you don't need to think about it anymore. Right?
That's really cool.
And as a coach or as a teacher, you can help the athlete or the dancer get to that place, move up levels that way.
Mm-hmm. So what are maybe some, you know, like the academy is so often very kind of separated from like, you know, day-to-day life, day-to-day people, the lay person. There's so much interesting research happening in scientific spaces, academic spaces, that I guess some of it makes its way into the kind of mainstream. Some of it makes its way into mainstream and kind of like quackery and like snake salesman, like sort of like, or snake oil salesman sorts of ways, and like, you know, professional or self-development sort of things. And I think that that's all fine. But, you know, I guess what I'm, in a long way I'm asking is like, are there, from you having this kind of exposure to academia, are there 1 to 3 helpful sort of, you know, evidence-based pieces of advice for folks that are learning movement, similar to what you just described with, you know, the if you're learning a motor skill, focus in the beginning, disassociative kind of experience for flow state at the highest levels after like 10,000 repetitions.
Yeah, the 10,000 hour rule or whatever. Honestly, like what I was thinking when you were saying that is the concept of play.
Yeah, that's big now. Like a lot of people are talking about play.
And this is like a really like a evidence-backed thing, even though it may not seem that way on the surface. But a lot of the creativity with motor skill and movement comes from play. So if you restrict it too much to like a regimented style, then you're ignoring the play aspect and the creativity that play could bring into it, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with the Spurs, San Antonio, where I'm from, the basketball team, the NBA team.
Of course I am.
Yeah, the Spurs.
How can I not be?
Okay, good. Pop.
Yeah.
Okay, so good. So
some of the best, you know, Duncan.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm glad you know, because I didn't know how familiar like people were.
That team, you know, we could just chill and talk about that team if you want.
Yeah, so
you know?
I like grew up in the Big Three era, and there's like this anecdotal thing about Manu Ginobili. It's like one of my favorite players, and he kind of has like this free-flowing like Argentinian like.
It's kind of sloppy and a little
like,
wild sometimes.
Yeah, like the Latin, like the Latin flow, right?
Yeah.
And he goes into this system in San Antonio, and that's very regimented.
Yeah.
And like Pop has a militaristic background, right?
Yeah.
He was like in the Air Force, I think.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because the clash of these like two worlds, like kind of how we're talking about. And there's this story about the relationship between Manu and Pop is like beating his head into the wall, and he's like, Manu, like why do you do that? Like why do you do this? Like I need you to play our system, right? And he's like, well, like I'm Manu, like I'm just Manu.
Yeah.
And so eventually he had to like allow him to be himself within the system.
Sure.
So like that's a really good analogy for dance, because there is like a regimented, if you want to call it militaristic, you know, maybe we don't have to use that word, but there's kind of like this repetition thing that you have to learn, but also you want to implement like your own style, and I think that comes a lot from play.
Yeah, of course.
Right, like I didn't start playing soccer like in a regimented way. Like I started playing at recess, which is like a total play, like unstructured environment, and like, you know, you learn things from that help you. So I'm like against like early regimented things, and I think with dance it's like, you know, maybe try to find that like outside class dance experience, and then you could use class to like help inform that outside. Like you need both. Like you send out the list of the clubs to like go to in the emails, and I'm like, like I'm gonna go to some of these clubs and like try out what we learned in class. You need both.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a great like cap on this, you know, just because it's so important to remember to be playful. And I think I love everything that you've said, even just talking about, you know, like the helicopter-y parent or even, I mean, just like how so much of what we do trends towards competition, but not always playfulness. I think playfulness is something that we often, it atrophies in us. You know, like how to be, what is playfulness? You know, I think if more people were treated their dance as kind of playful, like, you know, it's like, I have to get it right, this has to be cool, you know, versus like just goofing off. Because like when you really think about a lot of these dances at their root, shit is fucking goofy.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's so goofy. Like I always am like so perplexed by how seriously people take themselves doing dance, where I'm just like, yo, you look like you're silly, you're being silly, like this is organized silliness, and I wish people like would just like fall back a little bit, both like the most experienced people who are dancing and the newcomers. Just realize, hey, we're all just like, we're making a lot out of just like, you know, games and silliness and like character make believe. And so your notion of play, I think, for me inspires like just thinking about play in such a large kind of schematic. You know, it's just like the playfulness at the base of just like having a good time, you know, experimentation, taking risk taking, not letting the ego inflate. You know, the imagination and getting in touch with the imagination, or like, or just kind of like expressing whatever is inside outwardly. You know, and kind of the unknown, because I think playfulness relates a lot to the unknown as well, particularly when you watch young people actually at play. So much of it is just dealing with the absurd, but like as adults we all like must have like this sort of like militant control, or like obsessive authoritarian control over what we know and what we're doing. So yeah, no, I love that. I love just like us just
Organized silliness. I like that. Yeah,
like,
I like that.
It's just silliness. It's just really, it's really, I mean, you could name it. You could name, let's go through it. Name some dance styles, and let's talk about how silly what's going on. Because this is just like very silly. You can go across any of them. I bet, yo, that shit is silly. And people are taking themselves so seriously. I'm like, when you get down to it, we're all being silly. And it's great. It's empowering. But
like you can't be serious and do the Cabbage Patch. Like,
exactly.
Like, let's be real. Like, I learned that the other week with Ricky, and I was like, this is just so, like...
Yeah.
I was like, this is so silly. You just can't do this and, like, be serious.
No.
Like this whole, like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, like, it's like...
No,
you know,
you're totally right.
You know.
I totally agree. It's, but, you know, but that's the fun of it. But, you know, it's interesting, going back to this competition aspect of it, it's so perplexing how something that was made and came out of this kind of like, let's just call it like inadvertent, accidental, spontaneous wellness, right? You know, it's like it's spontaneous. It's like, this is a reaction to stress, right? It's like it makes you smile, it makes me smile, it's part of the party. It's reflective of like the sounds and the clothes that we're wearing. It's youth culture, but now like that like core fundamental and like the spirit behind it has so quickly become part of this like kind of competitive space. You know, it's just so wild that like,
Yeah.
You know, I think about it with this style called locking a lot.
Locking, yeah.
You know, it's like there's some serious competitions with it, you know.
Yeah.
But it's always a little funny to me. It's like, I'm going to smile and be cheerful harder than you being smiling and cheerful.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, and then it becomes, it's just weird. A lot of these things, a lot of my struggle as I've grown older is trying to reconcile the kind of more base communal aspects of all of these things and like where they are at their genesis with how generations later younger folk are grasping on and holding on to these things, and it's through this kind of weird kind of reconstitution of like what these things are. You know, it's just like, and most of it's competitive. It's like it's competitive and it's also commemorative. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of this weird kind of like reenactment that's happening oftentimes. It's very perplexing and confusing to me. But that's kind of an interesting position I have as kind of an educator and somewhat of a ambassador or student of the art and the culture.
Yeah.
And I think for me, in a lot of ways, I'm compelled to challenge it and maybe like point out, hey, is this a discrepancy? Why has it grown to this, opposed to just being purely about connectedness? Mm-hmm. Is this connectedness? You know, it's kind of like oftentimes at these competitions, people who have done whatever, they maybe didn't place at the top, will go to like a judge and be like, what can I do better? Like, the fuck? You know, it's like, we're dancing.
Yeah.
You know, what are we doing here? So is it like, can you commemorate better than that person, basically? Or can you meet some sort of like iconic sort of representation better than that person? Are you on trend better than that other person? What is, you know, who's making the trends? Who's making the molds? That's the one thing that I think it's challenging for me about art forms or expressive forms that become sport-like, because it's like the difference is, like with the sport, I can deal with something objective and measurable. Did you make the basket?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like yes or no. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a yes or no question. And so I think I'm always kind of suspicious of you know, I grew up as a martial artist. So I did most of my competition in martial arts. You know, when I got to like the opportunity to maybe compete more in dance, it was too abstract for me. You know, in martial arts or even I wrestled competitively.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and almost wrestled in college.
Wow.
You knew when you lost.
Yeah.
There was no mistaking losing. Like the loss was a loss, you know, and it wasn't really abstract. To me, there's a lot of abstraction with like judging creative output, particularly at the highest level of like dexterity.
Yeah, a couple things. I think competition is a way to organize things. You know, we've been saying like we're social creatures and we're social animals. We compare. So I think competition is like a vehicle of like doing that and like putting people together, right? Like, for example, right, the soccer team that I coach in Texas like is a competitive soccer team. It bonds us together. We play other teams. We are comparing ourselves to other teams. But maybe it's a way. Maybe we can think of it as a way of like scaling up. Like, how do I improve? How do I get better? Because we naturally want to get better as human beings too. So, but yeah, it can get kind of toxic if you lose the playfulness motivation to it. Like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this just to compete, just to like show I'm like an alpha male or whatever, or is it because I enjoy the art of this sport? And you can get lost in that, and that's where the burnout comes, and that, you know, early retirement and kind of like loss of interest, depression, and all that. We can talk about all that. But the other thing I wanted to say is you kind of like talking about this like abstract nature, right? So like in my background, like strength conditioning, like sports training, like we're always talking about, okay, like train this muscle, train this thing. But you can train being like abstract too. If you just like go to these classes and like you like in the beginning and you're like, all right, I'm gonna give you all 2 minutes to like do your thing. And at first I was like, I don't know what the hell to do, right? Like I'm just here. But once you like I was like, more times you say that, and, like the cipher is like kind of just repetition, repetition. Then I was like, oh, okay, like I get it now, like because it was like a trained thing. So like, yes, do you need to like train creativity? Like we can probably make an argument that you could, right? Like I mean, that could be really helpful for you when you're just starting to dance. Like maybe you don't know, but you bring it out of you by training the creative muscle, if you will. And that can help you be more creative. Everybody has a creative side.
Oh yeah.
Everybody has a mode of expression. It just depends whether you put time and energy into like flexing that muscle more often,
Final to close.
Yeah.
What's your plans for dance in the next year? What are you doing to keep dancing? You're going back to Texas. What's the plan?
I know. I was joking with our friend Claire, who was also in that dip class, and she was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to like FaceTime you and like cue you into the dance class. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna miss it so much. Well, I don't know. I mean, like we do have there's a salsa studio near my house, and they did have classes. It was like Afrobeats. They had some Afrobeat classes. And I'm just gonna try to like microdose some of that to like keep that muscle going.
Great.
And then obviously I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna go to some dance clubs and keep that going, and like, so maybe these are like being here this summer was like the training wheels, and now I'm gonna go back to Texas and like experiment more and be off the training wheels for a little while. So that'll be good. And then whenever I come back, I can come here and do this more often. But yeah, I'm just gonna try to like find people too that
it's a life. Like, you'll find there as soon as you start stepping out. You'll find them. And the beautiful thing is that it'll be something like unique and communal to whatever space you're at. So you'll develop a language and a common form of expression that will be very powerful ultimately, because it's your own and it belongs to this nest of people. Yeah which is dope and very promising. So
no, I'm gonna miss it here for sure.
Well, we're here. You got a spot whenever you come.
I'm gonna visit here like on my breaks. I was doing that last year too.
Nice.
Fall break, winter break.
Nice.
And I'll come for a couple classes.
Dope.
Fit it in.
Dope.
Yeah, we'll keep that going.
Chris, it's been a great conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for sitting with us.
Yeah.
It's been a great token.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.